I've been thinking a lot lately. I saw in my news feed most recently, the most recent example of the Democrat Party's push lately for abortion up until birth. And in Virginia, letting the baby die if it survives the abortion. And now in the US House of Representatives, the Democrats managed to vote down a measure that would say, look, if the baby survives the abortion, you treat it like a baby. It's not medical waste. And they're fighting back. And they're trying to say, well, it's because we only do these abortions when the baby's so sick it's dying anyway, which, first of all, makes very little sense. Why do you need to kill it if it's going to die soon anyway? But we'll set that aside. If a baby's born and clearly the baby's dying, doctors don't get all aggressive any more than they would somebody with advanced cancer or somebody that's had a devastating head injury. If somebody's dying, they do palliative care, they do hospice, they do things like that. So a baby born alive during an abortion versus a baby who um, comes out prematurely because the mother was in an accident versus a baby that's born at full term. If a baby comes out of the uterus and it's got a problem, the law they're trying to say is that you treat them equally. Not that if a baby comes out alive from an abortion, you do everything possible to keep that baby alive as long as possible and treat it far more aggressively than you would a baby whose mother wasn't trying to kill it. um, these laws are just saying that if you survive an abortion, you run that gauntlet. They tried to kill you, but you came out alive. You are entitled to the same chance at life as any other baby at the same gestational age and the same state of health. And it's boggling my mind that we're getting this huge, unified, almost nationwide push to say no. Once the decision's been made that that baby is to die, then the baby must die. And if the baby somehow comes out alive, too bad for that baby. Um, and it's one thing to see, there's some doctors here and there doing some questionable things, and some of them are very high profile. I mean, Douglas Carpin, who three of his former employees came forward and testified and had pictures of babies. They said, these babies, healthy mother, healthy baby, born alive, he killed this baby. And they had photos. And these don't look like babies killed in utero. These look like babies that came out and then were killed. Okay, I've seen enough pictures that pro-lifers take of babies they find when they're dumpster diving, um, or babies that get abandoned when an abortion clinic closes, or babies that get left in a storage room, which has happened. Um, to I've seen what a typical baby looks like that was killed in utero, and these babies look like they came out first and then were killed. And you know, Carpin, whose staff said he was doing that and brought these pictures out, he's a member of the National Abortion Federation. Um, this is a guy who I listened to a National Abortion Federation risk management seminar tape, and he was complaining about the pro-lifers outside his clinic taking his patients away because they'd come in for the first day of these late abortions where he'd put the laminaria in, and then the patient would leave and talk to the pro-lifer outside, change her mind and say, I want the laminaria taken out. When he says no, the pro-lifers take her to the doctor and then she wants her money back. And instead of the response being, well, obviously your counseling sucks, if spending 5 minutes talking to a stranger outside your clinic makes her decide she doesn't want this abortion after all, your counseling leaves a lot to be desired. No, instead of saying that, they said, well, you need to make her sign a contract that she agrees to go through with the abortion. And then, that's how you avoid this problem of women wanting refunds because they don't want the abortion after all. So there's already that going on. And only the pro-lifers are going to remember the Dean Alberti years and years ago, went to Life Dynamics, and he testified about, I found out through various means that this was Dr. Robert Christ, who works for Planned Parenthood, works at Reproductive Health Services in Missouri, very well respected National Abortion Federation member. And Dean Alberti testified that sometimes Christ would put one of these aborted babies on the tray in front of him to cut it up and take the fetal parts for research. And he'd see that the baby's alive and he'd call Chris over. This one's still alive, and Chris would kill it. So that's another very high profile, very well connected doctor. So, we've got those two there. Um, and if we look at the other doctors who are openly doing late abortions, Kermit Gosnell, he was just kind of word of mouth. He wasn't being paraded around by abortion rights activists. I mean, he worked at a National Abortion Federation clinic one day a week. The abortion that ended in the murder of baby boy A was started at that National Abortion Federation clinic, probably around 32 weeks pregnant. Illegal as all get out. And for some reason, nobody went after that clinic for letting him start a murder there, treating them as an accessory before the fact, which certainly they were. But, Gosnell even had that connection in the National Abortion Federation. Um, how many of these people does it take to reach the tipping point where the number of abortion doctors who are like the people who are referring to Gosnell saying, look, not after 12 weeks, not after 14 weeks, not after 18 weeks. Those limits aren't limits set by law. Those limits are set either by the management of the clinic, because as the abortions become riskier, they don't want to undertake that level of risk. But more often, it's the doctors just aren't comfortable with it. It's one thing to stick in a suction tube and everything comes out and it looks like glop, and you can foist looking at the little arms and legs and intestines off on somebody else. You go do the POC room, products of conception, pieces of children. Yes, some abortion clinics, POC stands for product of conception, and they will say pieces of children. But you can foist that off on the other employee. You don't have to watch it come out through the tube. You don't have to empty it out. You don't have to look at the little arms and legs. And if the pregnancy gets far enough that they're having to reach in with forceps and pull out an arm or a leg, they often get uncomfortable with that. And they're like, if I'm not doing that. I can't sleep at night if I'm pulling out legs and having to look at these legs and these arms and these spines and these eyeballs falling into my lap. And yes, you can, at a National Abortion Federation meeting, there was a big laugh about how an eyeball fell on my lap and it's gross. Okay. There are doctors doing abortions who it's past their comfort level to have the eyeballs falling on their lap and be measuring little feet to verify the gestational age. So those are the primary reasons why clinics draw limits. So, there are a lot of doctors doing late abortions. If you go to abortion clinics online, it's an advertising page, and you can click on, later abortions, and they're openly advertising elective abortions too in past 24 weeks, and then past that, it's their indications and call us and ask. And there's a tape of an investigator who called the clinic in New Mexico, 32 weeks pregnant, saying her husband lost his job, and life happens, and we've decided it would be better. And the woman taking the phone call says, well, let me go talk to the doctor and see if she'll take you, and comes back and goes, yeah, we'll take you as a patient, and then schedules it. It's just really making me think, are these, Carhart, wish I could remember her name, these ones that are openly doing these very late abortions. I know Hearn is very, very powerful. Hearn has government connections, as well as connections within the abortion rights movement. And is Hearn pushing for this? I don't know. But you just have to wonder, why has it reached this tipping point where there is this huge, huge push to go not only up to the moment of birth, but even if that baby survived, he's been slated for death, and that's what he's going to get. Um, is it that if you kill them first, there's usually once they're past viability, they do what's called diging the baby, and that's short for digoxin. And digoxin is a drug that they inject through the amniotic, through the abdominal wall, through the womb, past the amniotic sac into the baby's heart. And the digoxin is a cardiac drug, and an overdose of it will stop the heart. But that takes some skill. It takes skill to be able to get in there and do that injection, and that's why Kermit Gosnell just delivered them alive. His staff said that he tried to do those injections and he just wasn't any good at it, so um, he went ahead, delivered them live, and then killed them. So, I mean, is it that it's just easier to kill them after they come out? I mean, it's certainly safer for the mother to wait until the baby comes out and then kill it. Um, the methods they use to make sure that the baby's dead, um, the transecting the cord, which is you're having to reach in with surgical scissors and cut the umbilical cord so the baby suffocates, or the injection into the heart, or they can go in through the soft spot and inject the fatal drugs into the brain. But that does take some skill, and that's an additional process that they need to incorporate. So I guess it is a lot faster and easier just to wait for the baby to come out and then make sure it dies. Um, I'm just seriously, if um, some pro-choicer explain this to me, why all of a sudden, instead of back when Planned Parenthood versus Casey came down, they were willing to roll over and play dead after 24 weeks. Yeah, fine, we can do them up to 24 weeks, and then squeeze the rest of them through this tighter health loophole. Roe versus Wade required that you have a health loophole. That was mandated. Planned Parenthood versus Casey tightened it up quite a bit, a lot, to where you couldn't just say, well, she's kind of depressed, that's health. Um, there had to be a substantial risk to a major bodily system under Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and they let that ride. And now all of a sudden they're undoing it. They're wanting to go back to the Doe versus Bolton definition of health, which is finances, age, family situation, um, basically general sense of well-being. If the woman says she thinks her life would be better if she had this abortion under Doe versus Bolton, that fits health. And there is this big push to get the Doe versus Bolton definition of health established, where if she can give a reason, that fits under health. But that doesn't explain why. I mean, yeah, the mother's pretty uncomfortable with it if the baby comes out alive. Often they're very distressed and they start, wanting you to call an ambulance and take the baby to the hospital and whatnot. And then you get a lawsuit and everything's just ugly. But I'm just really trying to wrap my head around why all of a sudden there's this huge push. And uh, Democrats, any answers? Because I don't have any that aren't really nasty. And I'm trying to think the best of people, even the best of people who are doing some pretty nasty stuff.